In our last video, we became an initiate of the Brotherhood of Steel and fully explored their headquarters at the Lost Hills bunker. There, we finally got a suit of T-51B power armor. But when we talked with High Elder Maxon, he told us that his entire organization is on high alert due to the threat of a supermutant attack. He believes that an army is amassing to the north, and we in fact had evidence of this. And so he and the 4-member High Elder Council sent us off to explore the northern wastes to find out where this super mutant army was hiding. But the north is big. I mean, how vague is that? Walk north until you find some sort of super mutant army. That's not very good direction. And so instead, we headed back to the hub, did some trading, ran a few caravans in hopes that we could find someone who had any clue as to where this army was hiding. We found no answers, but we did learn of a city southwest of the hub called the Los Angeles Boneyard. And so, in an attempt to exhaust all options before we wander blindly into the wasteland, we head to the Los Angeles Boneyard. And the trip isn't that bad. It's just a few days southwest of the hub. We arrive on June 2nd, 2162. These are the ruins of Los Angeles County, California, the playground of America. But in 2162, Los Angeles is now the playground for gangs. We arrive at a town called Adytum, which is essentially a small southern district of what was once Los Angeles. As soon as we arrive, the guards of this town greet us and warn us. Welcome to Adytum, stranger. Watch yourself. We'll be watching you, they say. We learn that the guards we see walking around with metal armor and powerful weapons are called the Regulators. They're led by a man named Caleb, and we are told to talk with him if we'd like to learn more. From this fellow, we get some rudimentary directions. East of Adytum, we can find the headquarters of the Followers of the Apocalypse. He describes them as a bunch of peace nuts. Also east of Adytum, we can find the Blades. We actually find them more north than east of this location. He describes the Blades as a bunch of skags. South of Adytum is a place called the Cathedral, which is the headquarters of the Children of the Cathedral. This guard thinks that both the Followers of the Apocalypse and the Children of the Cathedral are nuts. He says that the followers don't realize that the world has changed. It'll never be the place of peace and happiness they want it to be. And the Children of the Cathedral spend all their time worshiping some sort of god in their cathedral to the south. We learned from High Priestess Jane at the hub that this god's name is the Holy Flame. He's glad that they have a hospital and offer their doctor services, but he still thinks that they're a little bit too weird, and he thinks that they're probably hiding something. He ends by saying, "Look, I can't talk anymore. If you want a job, go talk with Zimmerman." With that warm greeting, we can explore the town, and one of the first things we notice is that the town is wrapped in 2 chain-link barbed wire fences. Are the fences trying to keep enemies out, or keep the people in? If we travel due south from the gate, we find a man wearing a full suit of combat armor. This is Caleb, and he leads the Regulators around here. He says that the only reason Adytum is a nice town is because he and the Regulators work hard to keep it safe. The town mayor is a guy named John Zimmerman. Caleb suggests we check in with him, and he tells us a bit about the other factions here in the Boneyard. Up north, we can find a group called the Blades, and Caleb here describes them as a pretty pathetic herd of people. Northeast of here are the Gunrunners, though he doesn't explain to us exactly what they do just yet, and next to them is the Deathclaw Playground. So Deathclaw roam the streets of Los Angeles? South of Adytum are the Children of the Cathedral. They run a hospital out of a big church. And northwest, we can find the Followers of the Apocalypse, whom he describes as being all peace types. When we ask him about the history of the Regulators, he says that the Regulators are the only police force in Adytum. Caleb here makes sure to train his men hard, and he makes sure that the skags in town are working hard enough. The Regulators have developed such reputation that no one dares to mess with them. He reveals even more about how he truly feels about the people of Adytum when he talks about the mayor Zimmerman. He says that Zimmerman can barely put enough sentences together to talk, but we should go and talk with him because he needs some help with the Blades. they've done something to Zimmerman's half-witted son. Golly, Caleb here doesn't seem to really like the people he's protecting. Leaving Caleb, we can explore Adytum. We'll start by exploring this shack to the west. It's empty, but we find a ladder leading underground. Here we find a bit of a shop. It's a small shop run by a cheery man with close-cropped hair. His name is Tyne. Tyne explains to us that Adytum's main export product is ammunition. The people of Adytum make their living by crafting ammunition and then trading it as currency to the merchants of the hub. That's how they get their food and water. Tyne here is the merchant who facilitates that trade. The ammunition crafters of Adytum give him the ammunition, and then he trades it to the merchants of the hub. When we ask him about the town, he's not very helpful, though he does say that the leader of the town, Zimmerman, is a fair man, though he's not really the brightest guy. He also brags about a scientist working out of Adytum named Miles, probably the only man in 100 miles who knows anything about science. Is that why he's named Miles? We can barter with Tyne. He has some chems, explosives, and some ammunition, but it's not a very large selection. Each of the tables in his shop has a different selection, so to browse his full inventory, we have to click on both. None of the containers down here have anything interesting, so when done, we can head back up the ladder to Adytum. To continue exploring, we have to go south down Main Street. There are a lot of buildings here. We'll start by exploring to the west. In the first building to the west, we see a bunch of regulators walking around. Perhaps this is a barracks where the regulators sleep. It's otherwise empty, so moving south, we find even more regulators walking around. Goodness, how many regulators are needed to patrol each house? But here we also find Zimmerman, the mayor of Adytum. Now, the guard said that this is the man to go to if we wanted a job, and we can ask him about that. He says that he might have a job for us, but only if we have experience killing a vicious, murdering band of thieves. When we ask him to elaborate, he says that north of us is a gang called the Blades. He describes himself and the townsfolk of Adytum as being humble, God-fearing folk, but these Blades, these monsters, prey on them. And then, caught up by emotion, he whispers under his breath, "And they prey on our children." The regulators do a good job of keeping the townsfolk safe, but even they have to sleep, and the Blades like to attack at night. They sneak into the town at night to kill the citizens of Adytum and kidnap their children. And then he stops for a moment to compose himself before continuing. They even use suicide bombers. Last week, one of the Blades showed up at a regulator's barracks with dynamite strapped to his chest. Of course, his plan was to blow up the barracks to weaken the town of Adytum to prepare for a full-scale attack from the Blades. But luckily, the regulators killed the suicide bomber before he could explode. Now, Zimmerman didn't see this, he just heard people describing the story, but he swears that it's true. But his hatred of the Blades is personal. Zimmerman had a son named Jason, but Jason lived outside the safety of Adytum. For reasons unknown, they kidnapped his son, tortured him, and killed him. They left him impaled on a post right outside the gates of Adytum as a warning. The job he has for us is simple. He says that the Blades will completely fall apart if we kill their leader named Razor. And so he puts a 2,000 cap bounty on her head. He asks us, will you do it? We have a couple of options. We can say, I don't know, there's something weird about this story. It's kind of convenient that no one actually saw the suicide bomber except the regulators. There's a lot more going on here than we really know about, and I don't want any part of this. If we choose that, he just ends the conversation. Alternatively, we can agree, and he also ends the conversation. So it looks like we gotta keep our eyes open for the Blades. In the northern corner of his room, we find another ladder leading underground. Lots of basements here in Adytum. This just leads to a little hideout of his with 2 beds. Presumably one was for his son. In his bookshelf, however, we find a number of goods that we can take with impunity. Here we find a backpack, a bag, a first aid skill book, a first aid kit, and a doctor's bag. Both the bag and the backpack are used to organize items in our inventory. They don't increase our carrying capacity, but it's a handy way to, say, organize ammunition in one and chems in the other. There are some glitches with bags, however. If you put a bag within a backpack, it's possible the items in that bag can disappear, and it's best not to put ammunition your weapon is currently using inside a bag, otherwise it can't automatically reload. It's also much more difficult to use the right-click and look dialogue to use items directly on an object or a person when it's stuck in a bag. Also, bags aren't bottomless. The backpack can hold 40 pounds worth of goods, and this small satchel can only hold 20 pounds. Heading out of Zimmerman's house, we can walk east. The tent to the north is empty, though the regulators are constantly saying, "We're watching you." But in the building directly south of this, we find a merchant, described as a large, muscular man. He says that his name is Smitty, and that he's the local blacksmith. He's responsible for reloading all of the bullets they sell to the hub merchants, but he says that he also makes money by repairing tools for the hub merchants. And he also clarifies his business. He doesn't make ammunition from scratch. He says that he doesn't have the tools and machinery necessary to generate new brass. Instead, what he does is he collects and reloads old brass, that is, the shell casings, which he then sells to the hub merchants. Smitty here doesn't sell anything directly. All of the goods he produces, he gives to Tyne, and Tyne then sells to the hub merchants. So we can't actually buy anything from this guy. Heading into Smitty's bedroom, we can explore his bookcase where we find an assault rifle and some beer. We don't need either of these items right now. And hanging out just south of Smitty's building is a woman named Lorraine. She is a great source of information. She says that Adytum here used to be part of a much larger city called Los Angeles, but after the bombs, Los Angeles is now called the Angel's Boneyard. Adytum is just a small district of the Boneyard. Adytum was founded by the survivors of a vault. During the Great War of 2077, the citizens of Los Angeles flocked to the vault, and then as the dust settled, they emerged and split into 3 factions. One faction founded the town of Adytum, the next faction founded the Regulators Gang, and the third faction formed the Blades Gang. There is a third gang that roams the streets of Los Angeles called the Gunrunners, but she says that they aren't originally from here. When we ask her where this vault is, she says, well, supposedly it was somewhere south of here. She doesn't really know, but everyone left the vault originally because it was broken. She can then tell us some gossip about all of the characters we've met so far. She has nice things to say about the mayor, John Zimmerman. Zimmerman watches over the town and makes sure everyone gets fed and everyone has a job. Caleb is the leader of the regulators. He protects Adytum, but he seems to enjoy it a bit more than he should. Miles, whom we haven't met yet, is the resident chemist. He helps make the bullets that Adytum sells for profit, but he also built the water distiller, which allows the town to get clean water. He's also trying to build an underground farm as an attempt to make Adytum completely self-sustaining. That way, they're no longer dependent upon trade from the hub. When we ask her what she does, she says that she's a scavenger. She works with another scavenger in town named Samuel to collect stuff from the ruins of Los Angeles. The problem is that the ruins are filled with death claws. Also, the regulators take a percentage of all of the revenue they make from selling scrap. They say that it's to pay for their protection of Adytum, but this tax makes it less profitable for scavengers to pick from the ruins, so few people even try. She has mixed feelings about the regulators. They do keep the peace around here, but they control all the money coming in and out of the town. Essentially, this means that the people here in Adytum practically work for the regulators. They have to work so hard both to make enough to survive and to pay off the regulators for their protection that few of them have ever ventured beyond the fence that protects the town. Moving south from Lorraine, we see another tent off to the east. Inside, we see what the game describes as a dark-skinned man adorned with bright scarves and trinkets. This is Chuck. He describes himself as a farmer, but he also does work on the buildings of Adytum, restoring them and keeping them intact. And sometimes he says, I give advice. He then pulls out a set of tarot cards. Let me consult the cards, he says, and he shuffles them. Chuck pulls out a card with a picture of a man holding a vibro blade and a flag. The Prince of Swords is in the north. You must face a powerful foe far to the north. Oh, really? He's reading our fortune? We already know we have to go to the north. Come on, Chuck. Can't you get more specific than that? Or is it just the north? We can talk with Chuck again, and each time he tells us a different fortune. Chuck pulls out a card with a picture of a radio tower and a card with a picture of a man in a suit with a scepter. The Tower and the Emperor. Great change awaits by the hands of a powerful leader. Whether that change is death, I cannot tell. Okay, great change awaits me. Could you possibly be any more vague? We can have him read our fortune again. Chuck pulls out a card with a picture of a man in a lab coat with a computer in one hand and a card with a man in power armor. The Hierophant and the Prince of Wands in the south. Great wisdom and nobility await in a place to the south. We can try again with Chuck. He pulls out a card with a picture of a man dancing on a nuclear warhead. The Fool. I cannot help you. You must make your own way in the world. Well, for Pete's sake! Is this guy a fortune teller or not? However, after he draws the Fool, we can no longer get any more card readings from him, but he permanently increases our luck skill by 1. However, there is a weird quirk with this. We only get the luck bonus when talking with Chuck for the first time and navigating straight to his tarot readings. If we first ask him for gossip around town, even if we ask him about the tarot readings later, we lose out on the luck bonus. Also, each of the cards he read marks a new location on our map. The Hierophant and the Prince of Wands marks the Brotherhood of Steel's Lost Hills bunker on our map. It's strange that this marks the Brotherhood when the fortune talked about power and nobility to the south, but Lost Hills is north of the LA Boneyard. So this is a little confusing. Unless the fortune is talking about the glow. After all, the Brotherhood does send us there, and the fortune says that wisdom and nobility awaits in a place to the south. Perhaps the wisdom is the knowledge of FEV that we got from the glow. But nobility? Well, maybe the nobility is the rank of initiate that we got by completing the quest at the glow for the Brotherhood. The Tower and the Emperor marks the location of the cathedral on our map, and the Prince of Swords marks the location of the Mariposa military base on our map. At last, we finally know where to find the military base. But before we head there, let's finish uncovering the mysteries of the Los Angeles Boneyard. After finishing with Chuck, we can explore the building to the south. We find a crowbar and a bookshelf. Nothing else. Moving southwest, we see a bit of a farm. We don't know what they're growing here. The game just describes it as plant, but it looks like corn and cabbage to me. There is a tent just north of the fields, and inside we find the scavenger Samuel, Lorraine's friend. He tells us the same thing Lorraine did, saying that he searches the ruins of LA for scrap, but the death claws wandering the streets have made his job hard. Because of them, he only works at night, but not all of his scavers come back. Just last week, he sent a scaver out to search for some parts for Miles, but he never came back. He did, however, receive a transmission from him just before he disappeared, saying that he'd found the parts and he was on his way back, but he never returned. We can then ask him for his thoughts about things going on here in the Boneyard. He talks about the Blades and says that they're a sorry sight of a group of people. But then he says something strange. He says that sometimes the Blades end up here in Adytum, but only if they do what the regulators tell them to do. Samuel's description of the Blades here is very different from the one we got from Zimmerman. He says that if we want to find the Death Claws, we can find them east of the Blades. But since he tries to avoid the Death Claws, he hasn't seen the nest himself. He then tells us more about the other gang here in LA, the Gunrunners. He says they moved into a big factory up to the northeast not long ago. But he doesn't really know what they do. Not only is there a big nest of death claws between here and there, but the factory is surrounded by a moat filled with radioactive sludge. He then tells us most of what we've already heard about the followers of the apocalypse and the children of the cathedral. However, he does tell us something new about the children. He says, "I've seen creatures that can't be human coming in and out of the hospital inside their cathedral. And if stories are right," he says, "the church is built over an old vault, which Adytum's predecessors lived in." So the vault wherein the people of LA hid during the Great War of 2077 is beneath the cathedral? Sadly, the vault is broken, which is why the people left to found Adytum, the Blades, and the Regulators. Still, would be interesting to explore it. When done talking with Samuel, we can move west. We pass by a well and we find another shack, outside of which we find a man standing wearing a white smock. This is none other than Miles, the scientifically minded man we've been hearing so much about. He describes himself as a chemist. He makes the primer and powder that Smitty uses to reload brass casings. But on the side, he says he also likes to dabble with other chemicals. He then complains about the exorbitant profit that the hub merchants make off of their ammunition. The hydroponic farms he's been working on aren't functioning yet, and until they are, the hub merchants will continue to take a huge profit margin. We can offer to help fix the hydroponic farms, and he says great, he's missing just a few parts, and that we should talk with Samuel before going off and scrounging them up. Before we do, we can head inside his shack, where we find a ladder that again leads underground. Here we find a small cave, and inside the cave a bunch of troughs. If we inspect the troughs, we learn that these are table planters that have been filled with dung, and that mushrooms are happily growing in it. Well, at least they have a diverse diet. Heading back topside, we can continue exploring west. Now, Miles did say we should check in with Samuel if we want to help fix his hydroponic farms, but Samuel doesn't say anything that we haven't already heard. We don't start a quest with him, he just tells us that one of his scavengers has gone missing. That's the clue we need. We find an empty tent and some ruins off to the west, but nothing new. And with that, we fully explored the town of Adytum. To continue exploring, we have to head north and pass through the gate where we first arrived. This brings us to downtown Boneyard. This is where Zimmerman said we would find Razor and the Blades. There's a building to the right, and sure enough, we find a member of the Blades. But she appears to be a skag. She's not wearing any armor, not wielding any weapons, and she's not hostile. She even says, "Have a nice day." Heading out and moving to the west, we find another small building. Inside, we see a man. He quickly stares intensely into our eyes and then looks away. "What? Why are you talking to me? They'll hear you, you know," he says. When we ask him who he is, he says, "I'm Greg, but don't let anyone else know or they'll come find me." When we ask him why he's so jumpy, he says, "Jumpy? I'm not jumpy. Just be careful. They all say I'm paranoid, but I'm the one that's gonna be here when they come and get us." If we ask him who's coming to get him, he says, "It's all over. You can't make me. It will get you all. Nothing you can do will help." Who's coming for poor old Greg? Why does he think that someone's gonna come and cart off all the people? Unless, could he know about the Master's super mutant army? Could he know that they can't reproduce themselves and so they have to kidnap people to make new mutants? Could he be worried that they're coming here to the Boneyard? If so, how does he know all of that? Heading north from here, we find a large building with a pre-war sign outside advertising straight razor blades. Perhaps this is the origin of the gang's name. Outside the Blades headquarters, we find a bouncer. But he's a friendly bouncer. "Hello, lad," he says. "What might you be looking for today?" We learn that his name is McRae, and he helps defend the Blades from the Death Claws and the Regulators. Wait, he defends against the Regulators? He says that his specialty is fighting with his fists. If we ask him if he can teach us anything, he says that we appear to be an all-right lad, but he's so busy training the Blades that he doesn't have time to teach us. He says, however, that if the Blades were no longer on the defense, he would have the time to teach us. But sadly, even if we help the Blades here, McRae can't teach us anything. He has all of the right speech options, but the bonuses don't work. We never get them. He describes the Blades here as a good group of people. Again, in stark contrast to what we heard from Zimmerman. Heading inside, we see a bunch of people milling around, and one skag in particular standing amongst a bunch of bottles of Nuka-Cola. This man is Duggan, described as a craver of Nuka-Cola. He says that he spends his time pontificating about life a lot and helping the Blades understand the true meaning of Nuka-Cola. He claims that if he doesn't get a Nuka-Cola at least once an hour, he gets a splitting headache. When we ask him how much he drinks, he says about 5 liters a day. So, a precursor to Sierra Petrovita, I guess? When we ask for the leader of the Blades, he points us to Razor, who's standing in a room to the east. Next to Duggan are a couple. They appear to run this building. The man is named Michael, and he's described as an intense young man. He and his wife Christine here live in the building and upkeep it trying to help the Blades as much as they can. He describes the Blades as living on the defensive, also saying that their biggest threats are from the Deathclaws and the Regulators, but that their fortunes are turning because at least they have McCrae here to teach them self-defense. We can then talk to his wife, Christine, described by the game as a very beautiful young woman. She says that she and her husband just moved here. She can give us some of the directions we've already received, but then she has a unique conversation. CDEDBD docs? We can respond by saying, M are not docs. OSMR? CDEDBD wings? We can respond, YIB? MR docs? Yeah, and that's it. I was really confused by this. We don't see ducks here, just the Nuka-Cola bottles around Duggan. So yeah, no idea. None at all. In the rest of the rooms, we find more Blades members. They all just mill about, and none of them have any unique dialogue. That is until we explore the easternmost room. Here we find a woman dressed in all black named Razor. So, we can say, are you the leader of this gang? And she says, gang? We're hardly a gang. But yes, I am the one they all come to for direction. We can say, well, you look like a gang to me. And she says, I wish we were a gang. At least then we'd have decent weapons to defend ourselves with. We can say, you're not fooling me. You're all just a bunch of degenerates, and I think you're up to no good. Zimmerman sent me. With that, she looks around a little nervously. What? Did he? But instead of letting her finish, we can say, I've come to put a bullet in your head. With that, she and the rest of the Blades in this building turn hostile. Most of the Blades here are pretty harmless, including Razor, except for the Blades in the orange shirts. They wield huge sledgehammers, and they can attack 4 to 5 times each round. And each time they attacked, even when I was in a full suit of T-51B power armor, they would do between 15 and 20 damage each time. I was eventually successful, but I had to use a couple super stim packs to get through. But once we clear all of the Blades in this building, we don't really get anything. They're all pretty impoverished. We don't find any good weapons. There's no loot here. Heading out and going south, we can check in with Zimmerman, and he says, have you done it? Is she dead? If we say, yeah, she's dead, he says, thank the gods. Here's your money. You'll always be welcome in Adytum. He then gives us 2,000 caps. But if we say, of course she is dead, and I made her suffer as a personal favor to you, he says, finally, she knows the taste of hellfire. Bless you, my son. Here's the 2,000 caps and an extra 500 for putting in the extra effort. My son is revenged. Now he can rest in peace. Alternatively, back at Blade's headquarters, instead of getting right to the killing, we can explain ourselves first. We can say, yes, Zimmerman sent me to kill you to pay you back for killing his son. And then, at the top of her lungs, she shouts, what? I'll kill them! I'll send them all to hell! We have to have her explain, what are you talking about? She says, the Regulators. They were the ones who killed Josh, Zimmerman's son. I never would do anything to hurt Josh. It's the Regulators who are running Adytum, not Zimmerman. Josh lived here with her. And we get the impression that they may have had an intimate relationship. He knew the truth about what was going on, about how the Regulators were lording their power over the town. The Regulators told him that if he ever tried to contact his father or return to Adytum, that they would kill him. Late one night, he tried to sneak into the town to tell his father what was really going on. Razor was monitoring the Regulators' radio transmissions that night, and the Regulators caught him. She pauses, looks down, and shakes her head slowly. She can't bear to speak of it, so instead she says, here, it's all on this holodisk. If we ask her why she doesn't give this disc to Zimmerman herself, she says, it's not like any of us can get close to Adytum. We'd be shot dead before we even reach the gates. Besides, they're not equipped to deal with the Regulators. They need better weapons. The Gunrunners, the third gang that occupies the Boneyard, specialize in dealing weapons. They are off to the east and they'll sell the Blades their weapons, but the Blades can't get there because of the Deathclaws. The Regulators have the firepower to clear out the Deathclaws, but they refuse to do so because they don't want the Blades to gain access to the weapons. We can offer to talk with the Regulators for her, but she says that won't do anything. They only understand one language, and that language is violence. We can say, well, what if we show this holotape to Zimmerman? And she says, you can if you want, but with the heavy regulator's presence in Adytum, I don't think that's a very good idea. When done talking with Razor, we can read the holotape she gave us. The holotape is labeled Regulator's Transmissions. Regulator's Radio Transmission Log. Message sent. Regulator Patrol to Regulator Base, come in. Do you copy? Over. This is Regulator Base. Principal Regulator Caleb responding. Report. Over. Sir. Yes, sir. Regulator Second Class Cravata reporting. We've apprehended the Zimmerman boy trying to infiltrate our perimeter again, sir. Orders? Over. Again? Well, that's the last time that's gonna happen. Eliminate him and make it look like the Blades did it. Understand? Over. Sir? Did I copy correctly, sir? Kill him? Over. That's affirmative, Regulator. And I want it messy. Impale him on the guard post out front. Oh, and cut out his tongue so he can't talk while we attempt to save his sorry butt. Over. It shall be done, sir. Over. End transmission. So it's true. The Regulators killed Jason, and not only that, they tortured him, cutting out his tongue and impaling him on a spike. No wonder John Zimmerman was so shook up over this. Now we could go against Razor's advice and bring the holotape to John Zimmer. Heading back to Adytum, we can go into the mayor's house and have a talk with Zimmer. Only this time when he asks us if we've done it, if she's dead, we can say, I've got something you need to hear. As he listens to the holodisc, he begins to shake and turn red. You think he might drop dead on the spot from sheer hate. But then he shouts, I'll kill all of you! And with that, the Regulators say, I guess this means we're done with you, old man. And they murder him right on the spot. Then, all the Regulators in town turn hostile. So Razor was right. Giving this information to John Zimmerman was a bad idea. This means our best option is to find a way to the gunrunners and to get them to arm the Blades so that they can deal with the Regulators themselves. But I'm afraid I'm all out of time today, and yet there's still so much more to explore. There's the Followers of the Apocalypse to the west, the Deathclaw Nursery, and the Gunrunners to the east. We'll resolve the conflict between the Regulators and the Blades and finish exploring the Los Angeles Boneyard in tomorrow's episode. I publish many videos each week here on my channel, so if you want to make sure you don't miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. They also come on other products as well, like smartphone cases, mugs, pillows, posters, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early as we continue to explore the Boneyard.